Let's call this meeting over, please.
Exactly.
Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll get a moment of silence, please. All righty, thank you. For a new roll call, I want to welcome everybody viewing us. Roll call, I will start with County Commissioner Cos.
Here.
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 Here. Here.
All county commissioners are present. Public comment, I don't think there was any from what I heard. So if that's the case, we'll move on.
No public comment. Becky just said.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thanks, Jeff.
I have a clarification on public comment.
Yeah.
Public comment, you're on the items that are on the agenda, you're to sign up to be to make comment, but if people do attend, are they allowed to make comment at that point as well, if there's enough room?
I think that was the additional public comment. My understanding was if it was directly to do with something on the agenda was the first public comment, and that's 3 minutes per person. And then at the end of the meeting, the additional public comment could be on any item, doesn't have to be on the agenda, and it's 5 minutes.
Did you have to sign up for the
second one? I don't think you do.
Well, we recommend sign up for both because, especially the first one, there's a limited number of spots. I mean, we only
First
have,
one I knew you did.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we do recommend that people sign up for both. Plus, there's a limited number of seats. So if you don't sign up, you're not guaranteed a seat, and you're not guaranteed a spot to speak in the morning. But if there's time available and somebody showed up that wasn't listed, it's certainly the board could allow them to speak at that time, at either time actually, if it's on the agenda at the beginning, if it's not at the end.
Okay, so if a person showed up and there was not a line of people that had called in, that you would be allowed to speak.
Well, I think that's true, but I don't think that's the kind of format we want to make.
Right.
Continue to go with. I think if it happened, Mike, then yeah, we would do it. I would as a chair. But I think it's a good policy just to get it out to everybody, John, to get it out to everybody that we really want you to call in ahead of time so we can make sure we get you placed on the thing so we don't do that.
I just want a clarification on that.
Sure, Mike.
And it's also limited to the first 15 minutes
Right.
at the beginning. So.
Yeah. All righty, we'll go to administrative business.
I just wanted to thank the commission for being understanding about yesterday's weather and the rolling blackouts and everything. I made the decision to close the courthouse after consulting with basically all of the department heads, but specifically the sheriff and the EMS director and our emergency management director. All of us were in agreement. I spoke with our public works director as well, and just felt like because of the road conditions, because of the potential for the blackout and the extreme cold weather, it just didn't make sense to have people out on the road if we didn't have to. So appreciate the board understanding that, and that's all I had.
Yeah, it was definitely cold enough for like that. People working out in this weather, hats off to them. Okay, Doug, did you have?
Well, yeah, I'd like to ask the county councilor. There's a lot of talk about the tax transparency bill that's being discussed. And like I said, I am definitely for any kind of property tax relief we can give our citizens. But I just would like to know, is the statute that on the local ad valorem tax, property tax reduction, is that law still in effect to where we're supposed to be getting 3.6% of the sales tax collected back to the cities or the counties?
Commissioner Smith, members of the commission, as much as I hate to prove Commissioner Culberson correct, I cannot give you a yes or no answer. It is and it isn't. The two bills that really impact the county are KSA 79-2964 that creates the county and city revenue sharing fund that is to be funded by a proportion of state funds collected from the cities and counties, and KSA 79-2959, the LAVTR fund, which is the one you specifically addressed. The most recent version of that bill, which was amended last year, creates a fund, specifies the amount of funding, and it provides that it shall be paid annually to the counties or cities and counties. However, subsection B of the version that was adopted last year states, except that no monies shall be transferred from the state general fund to the local ad valorem tax reduction fund during state fiscal years 2020 and 2021, and the amount of transfer on each such date shall be $27 million during fiscal year 2020 and all fiscal years thereafter. I believe it's worth noting that financial limitation because the estimated annual amount that should be transferred to the cities and counties is roughly $100 million a year, not $27 million a year. That same provision with respect to creating a fund but then directing that no transfers be made to the cities and the counties applies to KSA 79-2964, the General Revenue Sharing Fund. So in essence, the formula is still there. The direction that those funds shall be collected and paid to the cities and counties is still there. But there's an additional provision that it shall not happen. So,
Okay.
to that extent, that's your answer.
All right. So basically, they're not following the law.
Well, for the last 15 years, they haven't followed the law.
Well, since 2001.
Commissioners,
What it looks like to me is they changed the law
They
last year
made little provisions to get around the law.
to say they don't have to pay us. So
But prior to that,
up till 2020, they should have paid
prior
us
to that,
every year.
there's a lot of in the rears money
Yeah.
that should be going to the county
Yeah, for about
for
15
property
years.
tax relief.
Absolutely. And
So
it
if
has
any of
not
our
happened.
So if any of our viewers want to look at it's KSA 792959, and then we also got the city-county revenue sharing that we're not getting, correct?
Yeah, and that's
Yes,
79,
and that is
2964.
KSA 79-2964. And they were both amended last year to contain, again, a formula to allocate funding to the cities and counties, followed by an admonition that those transfers shall not take place.
Okay.
And I've been trying to sound the alarm on that for 2.5 years.
Well, that's what triggered this.
Culberson has.
Yeah, that's
I
what
mean,
triggered this. Me and Commissioner Cause
Right.
asked for this 2 years ago. So instead of paying us, they passed a law saying
Well,
they don't have
I mean,
to.
the bill's titled tax transparency. I'm trying to be
Right.
transparent here.
But they're
And
not.
tell you that there's a lot of money that the state is holding on to that should have came back to the counties specifically for property tax relief.
Because they were using that to balance their budget.
And then we're going to pass, and I have no problem with the tax lid. I have no problem with anything to help our residents with our property tax. But one size doesn't fit all in the state. Not every county has as much exempt property as Leavenworth County does.
Exactly.
And Doug, on top of that, when you don't receive that money back to the county or the cities,
It was collected here.
who has to pick up the bills? I mean, when you got
The homeowners.
Yeah, and I can remember this is going. Marcus right. This has been going on for 2001, I believe.
Yeah.
I remember when they said, "Oh, we'll be back next year."
That's right.
You got to hold people accountable, folks. You really do. Anyway, Doug, this is yours.
Well, it's just the title of it, and I'm not saying our representatives and senators in our area are bashing the cities and the counties,
Yes,
but
they are.
some of they're calling it the tax transparency, that we're not being transparent.
Well, the only transparent part about this is they put a dollar amount on it, $27 million a year is what they're not paying. That's the only transparent
There's all
part about
kinds of
it.
ways that we can help the laws to property tax. We could stop using comparable sales and just your house is worth so much, and if you want to tie the consumer price index, cost of living, rate of inflation to that every year, that'd be a simple formula. But the money that's collected on this sales tax, or on this tax, that's, was it 3.6%, supposed to come back to the counties?
That's correct.
Am I, okay.
And it has not been for
Since,
a decade.
okay, we're going on 20 years,
Yeah, almost 20 years.
almost 20 years.
I think the last time the board had asked me to look at this, it's a couple of years ago actually, the estimate at that time was that the state had withheld at least $25 million from the county over that time frame with this and a couple of other of the exemptions that they have allowed.
From Leavenworth County.
From Leavenworth County,
Right.
$25 million for Leavenworth County. And at the same time, they were critical of us raising our tax levy while they were withholding $25 million from us. And they still are with this, the tax transparency that they're trying to pass. I understand what the concept is, but I don't think they understand why our taxes have went up the way they have, even though property values went up, because they're withholding money that statutorily they were obligated to give us. And they weren't following the laws. So last year, they changed the law so they wouldn't be non-compliant. After 18 years, they changed the law.
Because they're not transparent.
And they don't include themselves in tax transparency, and they don't
Exactly.
include the school districts either.
And
So-
that's another thing. School districts are never under any tax lid, and they are the largest share of your property taxes. If you would look at your property tax, the lion's share goes to the school district.
And the school districts aren't providing for the roads, they're not providing for the EMS, they're not providing for the
Right.
health department, they're not providing for all of the services
Yeah,
that are being provided by the county government.
right.
They're just providing
And-
for building their schools and paying their staff.
And,
Yeah.
and
And that
I'm
doesn't-
open to anything to help with property tax relief, but even if the tax transparency does pass, I hope it does not exclude new construction from being added to your budget, because we can't continue to add homes and take over new streets and subdivisions
Right.
for the same amount of money.
You're right. No way.
I'd hate to
We
see
should
it
just
come
stop
down to,
Issuing building permits and
yeah.
That's great.
building new roads and just saying we're done.
And it's not just the roads, it's also the sheriff.
Right, I mean, just, like I
EMS.
said,
Yeah. Mike, did you have something?
every service.
I just had a question, Mr. Lawfrey. Is it correct, 2 of the last 3 years, we have reduced the mill levy on the county part, and one of those years we left the levy level? Is that correct?
Yeah, and in the last at least 4 years, I know for certain, it's probably longer than that, we have not had an increase. I think 5 years ago, they had an increase to pay for the roof over at the Justice Center.
Right.
But since then, we have had reductions or flat. And I know that this tax transparency says, yeah, but at the same time, your property valuations have went up 6, 7, 8%. I get that. And I understand, again, I understand the concept of what they're talking about. But reinstate the items that you were supposed to have been giving us all along, and our mill levy would be much less than it is today. I mean, again, $25 million over the several years, it's at least $1 million a year that they're probably holding from us. So,
follow-up to that is for County Councilor. Is it your opinion, we had visited about maybe a lawsuit on this issue, is it your opinion that these modifications by the legislature is designed to make it so that's problematic to bring litigation?
Well, Commissioner, I can't speculate as to the intent of the legislature, having not been present, or their counsel. The plain language of the statutes speak for itself. They created the fund, but then stated it shall not be paid to you. And those prohibitions on payment only applied to years 2020 prospectively. There has been discussion in past years as to litigation to try to correct this problem on behalf of the cities and the counties. I think the primary hindrance to that moving forward has been the hope that the legislature might correct it on its own, as well as the fact that litigation is obviously requires the expenditure of additional public funds for one public body to be suing another public body, rather than perhaps sitting down and trying to discuss a resolution of the matter short of that.
You know, one question I got on that, I just been made aware of. I should have known it, but you know, all these are representatives and sit in committees, and if this is not in their particular committee, I'm wondering if they're paying as close attention to it as we are here locally. So I was just thinking, is there a way to get this out to all of them, Mark, or to let them know that we're discussing this? Because a lot of times they don't get into it unless it comes out of committee and goes to a vote. And I think sometimes, playing back on what David just said, sometimes you get ahead of these things. Maybe maybe we can at least bring it to their attention.
Talking about our local ones or statewide?
I'm talking about all of them, but especially our local ones.
Our local ones have been informed repeatedly,
Yeah.
ad nauseum.
Well, I'd like to be proactive also, Mr. Chairman, but, and I am for anything to help with property tax relief,
Right.
but this particular
Yeah, I agree.
statute says this money is for property tax relief
Yeah.
to go back to the counties. So if this money was available, we would have a lower
And it was
mill levy.
withheld.
Yeah, but I guess the thing I say is that it's not getting out to the public as much as it should.
Yeah, and that's why.
It's here, and we're talking about it, Doug.
Yeah, and that's why I think our viewers should look up KSA 792959. And that's why I just would like, some other people to get in. And I just really want clarification. Am I wrong on this, or does that money supposed to be collected and then 3.6% come back to the counties?
That's the first sentence of the statute.
I think we know the answer to that, Doug.
Well,
You're absolutely correct.
On
whenever you
January
see
15th
something that's got a KSA in
Yeah,
front of
that's
it,
your-
it's usually the law you need to follow.
Yeah,
Well,
on
this is
January
year 3,
15th.
we've been trying to bring it up, and
Well, that's just it. And,
And I'm just,
in the statute, it says January 15th and July 15th of each year, the Director of Accounts and reports shall make transfers in equal amounts in aggregate equal 3.63% of the total retail sales and compensating taxes credited to the state general fund pursuant 36 blah 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 to the counties and cities. And that's a direct result. I think the statute is a direct result of when Commissioner Cos and myself 2 years ago brought this front and center to our local state representatives, and they said, for the last over 15 years we should have been paying you this LVTR transfer funds, but we haven't had the money to do that. So we said, well, what is the answer? Just like it was been suggested, we need to figure out how to work this out instead of pointing fingers.
right.
Figure out,
That's
well,
what I'm
it's
bringing
your fault,
this up
my
for
fault, whose fault
discussion.
it is. How do we fix it?
Yeah, so,
And so instead of fixing it, they passed these two
Yeah.
statutes saying we don't have to pay you.
yeah,
So
that was how to fix it.
But if we cannot include new construction or add that on top of our current revenues,
that's going to be
the
a
way
big
this
problem
county's
for us.
growing, it's
Yeah.
going to be a problem for us.
That's the only trade-off we have for the 35% exempt property
Yeah,
that we
that's
have.
what I said.
It's
One
new
size doesn't
construction.
fit all in this state of Kansas. This tax transparency thing will probably work in other parts of the county, but I just don't think with as much property that's exempt in this county and that we're growing so fast that we could keep up.
Yeah, only 65% of our property is being taxed in this county. 35% is tax exempt. So the only way we make up that difference is new construction.
And I want to do everything we can to lower property tax. I think I pay my share. And I would love to see it be able to lower, but this, I think, will hurt us, will not help us. And then, but anyway, I've taken up enough time in the meeting. I'm sorry.
I appreciate it, Doug. I think
I appreciate it,
it's
Doug.
well received. The comments on that.
I just really wanted clarification.
Okay.
Because I wanted to make sure any of them signs that we go by that's got a KSA under a speed limit, we got to follow it.
Well, I know the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Doug? Or anybody else on administrative business?
Not-
Okay, we'll do the,
Thank you.
thank you, Doug. We'll do the consent agenda. Anything needs to be taken off, or?
If nothing needs to be removed, then I've moved that we accept the consent agenda as Prepared.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on this? If not, Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, now for board action. This one I think is, get my paperwork out.
Mr. Knoll.
Ready for
Yeah,
Bill?
this is Bill coming up, I'm sorry. Got too much paper up here.
Yeah, I know it.
Go ahead.
All right, today for your board's consideration, we have the approval of the exchanging of federal funds for state funds. We chose to use the E58 bridge as a reimbursement project. We could have chosen a multitude of things that are general project items, including graveling, chip and seal, but when you reimburse directly for a construction project, it requires a lot less paperwork. This year, we would receive 90 cents on every dollar because of the reimbursement rates being offered through the program, and the county would receive $284,161.78 that would be put towards future projects within our capital improvement plan. If the board has any questions regarding these,
Bill, has this changed? Did this 90 cents, does that fluctuate every few years? I mean, is it 80 cent one time and then 90 cent, or is it?
it's been 80 cents once. I
Okay.
believe a year or
That's
two
probably what I
ago, the
forget,
state
I remember.
withheld a bunch of funds from
Okay.
counties when they were in a budget crisis, much like you guys were just discussing.
Yeah.
And then
Pattern here.
Yeah.
which statewide, when you look at those funds, it was millions of dollars. However, on this program, they have stated the 90%.
Okay, good. I just thought
It was 80%
Yeah.
before last.
The 90,
They get to
that's
go
good.
with it, that
You what?
90%, or can they change their mind halfway through?
Well, they can't once we sign this, so
That's where I was going with you.
yeah.
Well-
They sent us the agreement.
You hope not.
We hope that they can't. They sent
Yeah.
us the agreement at 90% this year. Also, the amount that each county receives generally fluctuates.
Yeah.
It's not always the 284,000.
Any other questions on this?
Is that based on need or population, or it just,
Traffic count.
yeah?
Everything's based on traffic count.
Yeah. Well, I know at
don't
one
think
point there was a lot of
I'm not
counties.
sure about that.
And I don't know if they still do this or not. You may be familiar with this, Commissioner Smith, but I know at one point there were several counties, probably 4 years ago, that hadn't provided any documentation to the state. And the state was holding tens of millions of dollars within the federal funds, and the federal government was coming to the state saying, if you don't need these monies for projects, then we are going to withhold those from your funding. And so they redistributed some of those monies to
Right.
other counties.
Right.
And so I don't know if, I have not looked into the provisions. We obviously do it as soon as it's available. We get those exchanged into local funds. But some of the fluctuation in the amounts might be due to the expiration of other counties' eligibility for not submitting for those funds. And
Well, there
so-
were some counties that couldn't afford to match, I believe, wasn't there?
Well, you can match gravel. So if you gravel roads and you put down any salt and sand, those are considered project costs, and so you can actually, if you
Do it for maintenance.
If you do it for maintenance and you supply your rock tickets, because I have participated in that in the past, you can actually reimburse for expenditures for gravel.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any county that doesn't have
Okay.
proper funds to do the reimbursement because
Okay.
it's maintenance. Some maintenance items qualify.
So we may need to apply for that when the frost comes out of our roads here in
Yeah,
a few weeks.
yeah, we'll be putting down a lot of gravel.
Okay. I like it. I always have. Any other commissioners have any comments besides that? Probably need a motion on this.
You ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the exchange of federal funds for state funds to be used for the E58 construction reimbursement project.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Any other discussion on this? Okay. Commissioner Collins?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Bill.
All right, thank you guys.
And next item is Crystal.
Oh, I did have a question for you.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Bill. I know Commissioner Culberson and I had visited with you about, can you hear me?
No.
Now,
Okay, about the clean rock, your ability to access that and where we're at on that.
So currently, there's a bit of a limited supply of clean aggregate available to us from the road department. Generally, that we would get some of that from the Springdale quarry on 92 highways, the ham zones, or we would get it from APAC over by Bonner Springs. But they have either ran out at one quarry, and then the other location has obligated that material to other companies and other jurisdictions. So currently, we are hauling what clean aggregate we are hauling, which is your screened rock, is coming from the service quarry in Atchison. And then we have been able to get some from the quarry over by DeSoto. So that we do have some access to some clean aggregate right now, but it is not from the normal suppliers that we would be getting it from. And the hauls are a little bit longer, so the amount that we can transport is a little bit less than if they were available at these other quarries.
So what's it look like as far as long-term being able to find a source of supply?
Well, long term, generally come after the frost is out of the ground and you're not putting down the aggregate down on a mud surface or with a lot of fines right at the surface, probably in March or April, we would be switching back to using the road rock or the crusher run type or AB3 material on a lot of the roadways with some of the fines mixed in with it. If you don't have those fines, your aggregate will tend to washboard a lot more. And so that material is available currently, but with a lot of moisture, you don't want to put down a lot of fines. And so, ideally right now, you'd use some screen material when available.
I know we had talked about the Jackson County gets a lot of rock from the Springdale quarry and that nice clean rock.
They get it from Big Springs.
Big Springs.
Yeah.
Have you been able to reach out to them?
We reached out to them. They have availability of rock. They have not returned a price if we were to try to stockpile some, say, at Tonganoxie, but we have reached out to them. They do have material available. There's material available in Atchison at some of the quarries if you wanted to stockpile rock aggregate. Obviously, you're going to have an increased cost in comparison to if it was available here locally, but it is out there. I do not have a dollar figure here today of the exact amount that they would pay for shipping. I also did call Jackson County's Public Works Department to see if they could supply us the cost per ton and did not receive a phone call back yet in regards to that. So I can follow up with what that price would be. That quarry is located between Lawrence and Topeka on 40 Highway, kind of by the old DuPont factory. And so you would have to haul probably...
It's not quick to get there. We've hauled some chips out of there before.
Yeah, it's probably an hour and 40 minutes or something.
And some of these quarries in the metropolitan area will be crushing or washing rock as soon as the weather gets better. But there's so much new construction going on, and this is concrete rock basically, and nobody wants a quarry in their backyard. So quarries there's a lot less quarries than there used to be.
And they closed the Cummings quarry too. So Atchison, the supply in Atchison County for their 600 and 700 miles of roadway is become more limited because Hams did close that quarry as well. So from what I understand, they aren't intending on crushing any more rock there. So as the number of quarries becomes more limited, the amount of supply available, the number of crushers with more mobile crushing units, it's just one of those where they aren't going to have all the supply at all times. And that's exactly what APAC, Bonner, they were saving that clean aggregate that they had for concrete.
And how much, now you gave me an estimate of how much rock is left in the Tonganoxie quarry.
Yeah, from the 2016 information that was available on the server, they estimated 13 acres of ledge was left underneath, like basically surface area, 13 acres with approximately 300,000 tons of aggregate that could be mined from that location.
And under the current specifications, they're not mining clean. They're not bringing out clean rock from there. They're bringing out.
The specifications that were used is they crushed an AB1 material and an AB3 material. I think one material may have been slightly cleaner than the other, but they did not do screened material that would separate any of your fines from your rock. We could specify whatever aggregate we wanted on a new crushing, and we had started to pull together the information on that. It involves stormwater prevention plans, pollution prevention plans, the SWIPs, and several other permitting processes, and some contracting. So currently the material we have on site there does have a lot of fines in it. What is left was considered AB3.
Okay, and how long would it? I mean, if to do that whole process, is that like 4 months or 6 months or?
To get them to crush?
Yes.
No, a year.
It would take that long?
Well, yeah.
Well, I didn't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, it'd take you. If we started, we started really looking into it, and we have a meeting with Hams. We've already spoke to Bettis to reach out to them to see if they had any interest in receiving an RFP document, and we have put in calls to other contractors, and we've gathered some of the information from the previous RFP that went out for services, and we were trying to look at what obligations the county had entered into with Hams regarding the scale house, or the scale material, or the scale unit. And so it would probably be 60 days before we could even receive information back from the contractors. We probably would need 30 days to finish the preparation of those documents, and then 30 days for advertising, and then we could put it on some sort of schedule. But
This quarry is a little more complicated than it's because we don't pay for it until we use it. So the company comes in there, puts an investment in, and pays for all the crushing, and we may take 5 years to get their money back.
And what we also need to research is if we were to crush out the remaining 300,000 tons of aggregate that are at that site, what obligations and timeframes do we have for reclamation? Reclamation of a site that size is going to be expensive, and how we're going to handle that aspect of it.
I think you're just going to have to go down to the next ledge to make it feasible, because there's 2 more ledges there, right, underneath that quarry? We're only got through the first one.
Yeah, you can take more overburden off.
Right, and go to the west end, start way down.
So
rock's going to be expensive. That's all.
But right now, there's rock available if we needed it for the projects we can do today. And this is not an unusual situation for this time of year that the quarries are low on rock, and they'll fire up their crushers like Commissioner Smith said here once the weather changes, and then rock will be available. If for whatever reason our normal supplies are low, we have options to go somewhere else. So it's not an emergency, is that?
Yeah, it's not an emergency. It's just longer hauls is all it is.
Right. I just thought this is some information that folks are asking about that we should get out there.
Anything else for Mike? Anything for Bill? Anything else, folks? Thank you, sir. We will have
Thanks,
Crystal.
Bill, for all you do.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Crystal. Good morning.
How are you
Morning,
today?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. How are you? Commissioners, before you, I have a request to approve Resolution 2021-5. This is a resolution that would address our current traffic impact fee policy and would institute a new traffic impact fee policy. As you are all aware, the Commissioners directed staff to develop a traffic impact policy that was clear, easy to understand, and fairly implemented across the board. Staff has worked with Public Works to develop a fee policy that meets the criteria of the board. The attached policy provides a threshold for a $0 fee as presented. Businesses operating on a gravel roadway have a threshold of 24 passenger vehicles, which is 48 trips per day, before a fee will be required, and businesses on a hard surface roadway have a threshold of 49 passenger vehicles, or 98 trips per day, before a fee is required. The threshold for commercial vehicles, regardless of road type, is 4 commercial vehicles, or 8 trips per day, before a fee is required. It's important to note that the vast majority of all special use permits will fall under this 0 threshold fee. Those that are above and beyond that, there will be a fee implemented. Again, that fee is very clear and easy to understand. We can give this policy to applicants once they come in and apply for a special use permit, so they know exactly what they're looking at. And then perhaps the most important part of this policy is it very clearly dictates when a traffic impact study, structures and drainage reports, and other reports are necessary. Again, so applicants can know upfront, and we don't get into a process of they've submitted their application and then we have to go back to them and say we need additional information. Staff recommends approval of this, and we'll answer any questions you may have.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Good job.
Yeah, Mike?
One question I was have, if you're developing a subdivision, you're going to put in X number of houses, is this applicable to that situation?
I think this is specific to special use permits. However,
It's just special use permits, okay.
correct. I think in the review process, especially really before the review process with the subdivision development, those come in a little bit differently than special use permits. We know about them up front. We know what the proposed criteria is, or roughly what the proposed criteria is, and staff at that point is able to say, hey, we're going to need this additional information. Of course, that doesn't happen very often. The vast majority of subdivisions do not have a substantial impact on the roadway, but that is something that I believe staff can require at the time if it's necessary.
Okay. Well, there's a few of these subdivisions that are going on roads that have not typically had much traffic at all, and now they're going to have additional 10 houses or so.
That may be, and I think at that point, like I said, staff will work with Public Works and also engineering consultants and determine whether or not off-site roadway improvements are going to be required.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, could I get a motion to approve Resolution 2021-5, Traffic Impact Fee Policy?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other thoughts? Okay. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 Okay. Passes 5-0. Anything else for Crystal while she's sitting there?
She's next on the agenda, too.
Yeah.
She's still here.
Oh, yeah, I got you. Okay.
Unless you
Crystal,
wanna-
I tried to get you out of here. I'm sorry.
I appreciate it.
It was my best laid plan sometimes.
I don't know what I would do with the Wednesday morning, though, if I weren't sitting here.
I don't either. I think if you weren't here, we were in the wrong place.
Okay, go ahead.
Commissioners, I will go briefly through my quarterly report. Please feel free to stop me with any questions that you may have or any additional information that you would like. Try not to belabor points very much. The Planning and Zoning Department has been very busy. The year of 2020, we processed approximately 160 development applications. That does not include permits for single-family residences and accessory buildings and such. We've, again, like I said, we've been very busy. We've accomplished several policy changes that have been requested by the Board of County Commissioners. We also have done all of that, as you know. At one point in time, our staff was pretty well cut. We were platooning, however, we were still managing to get things done. So, as usual, I'm very proud of my staff. They work very, very hard. We have continued to work digitally. The implementation of the new website has actually made that a lot easier. It is now much, much easier to submit applications online. That has made, I think, the general public happy. It has also helped to ensure accuracy of permits, making sure that we have exactly what is needed. And it's made the processing time for that very quick. So I'm really happy that that new website is up and is working very well for my department anyhow. We have continued to have our joint review committee meetings. Those are meetings that take place every Monday morning with Public Works or engineering consultant, my department, and also surveying. Those meetings take place via conference and may continue to do so for forever. They work very well. The best thing about these is it's a great opportunity for staff to be able to identify problems with applications very early on, so that we can go ahead and get a handle on what needs to be done for that. It also helps for things to not fall through the cracks. As you all know, planning and zoning and public works work pretty closely together, and this has really helped that. We also have implemented a development submittal meeting application. Essentially what that requires is the developer makes an appointment before they come in and drop off all of their materials, so that we can make sure somebody's there and available, so that we can go through and make sure they have everything. We're not checking to make sure they filled it out correctly. We're simply making sure that they have everything that's needed. Again, that helps with delays. As you might not be surprised, it is not uncommon for applicants to drop off all of their documents at 4:30 on the submittal deadline day. So this way we can at least know whether or not it's a complete application. We have also made updates to our sanitary code, which has been requested by the Board of County Commissioners. The biggest change to that has been to allow engineered septic systems on 1 acre tracts of land. Staff also made a few safety changes and some setback changes. All of this information has been provided to KDHE. Unfortunately, things are moving a little bit slower at the state level because they are still all working from home. So the committee that would typically get together to work on reviewing this document, they're reviewing it individually and passing it off to the next person. So it's just taking a little bit longer than we had hoped. Last quarter, we updated the accessory dwelling unit policy. I believe that's working as intended. Again, we've made several regulation updates. We're continuing to make regulation updates. We have also finalized an application for the Building Codes Appeals Board. That is scheduled to post on the Facebook website. I believe we've reached out to the Times for them to do a quick little article on that. And then also, again, if any of you know anyone who may be interested in serving on that board, please, please, please send them our way.
Kristen,
Yes.
a question on the accessory dwelling units. Do you know where we're at on those deposits? Did we get those all?
I don't know if we have 100% of them, but I would be very confident to say we have 90% of them turned back in. Yeah. Or returned. Yes, not turned back in. Returned. We have a lot of happy residents in Leavenworth County. Some people got upwards of $7,000 back.
If you can't find the people or they're gone, do you just turn it over to the state?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we've worked really hard to be able to find people.
I'm sure it wasn't easy.
But like I said, I know Stephanie has worked really hard on that, and she has the vast majority of those returned back to residents. So
That's good.
I'll get an official number on that, but I don't think there are many outstanding. Yes, Building Codes Appeals Committee, if you know anyone, please, please, please send them our way.
Have you reached out to Tim Smith,
I have not.
fire chief in Tonganoxie Township? I believe he's interested.
Okay, thank you. Our department also sits on a number of MARC committees, the Active Transportation, Air Quality Forum. We used to sit on the K7 Corridor Management Committee. Mr. Knoll has primarily taken that over. I remain as an alternate. The Technical Forecast Committee, and then, of course, we have our Planning Commission. Planning Commission has worked very hard. As you all know, they've been great. We are working towards a work session in March, so coming up very soon to do goal setting for the comprehensive plan. I would love it if it's an opportunity that the board could also sit on that, if we could have a work session that was obviously a public work session so that everybody could be on the same page about what goals we want to pull out of the comprehensive plan to try to tackle this first year. So,
Okay.
What date is that?
I have not set the exact
you've not.
date yet.
Okay.
I will. I have to work with my. It'll be in March. It'll be a Wednesday in March.
Let us know.
And that's the review of the comp plan.
It's not really a review per se. It's more
Pre-review.
going through and saying these are the things we want to accomplish over the next year.
Okay.
And then we will have a review of the comprehensive plan late this summer or perhaps very early fall.
And the reason I was asking is because I had a question about what the game plan was for the zoning map. You know, typically what would come next would be the new zoning map, based on the current comp plan. So I didn't know
That would,
if we already had any plans or
So we
even
have
talked
the-
about that yet.
we have the future land use map, which of course is available. If for it to be changed to match the zoning, that would be a rezoning of the county. So, and that's something that,
And that's my question is, do we have currently any plans to create a new zoning map?
You mean rezone the entire county?
Yeah,
To match the comp plan.
to match the comp plan.
That typically that's not how it's handled, correct?
Well, how did we get from
You're
10 acres to 5 acres?
And that's what
On
I'm
the other
asking
one.
is how do we handle this typically? What's the next natural plan of action?
so typically with a future land use map, especially one that has as many proposed changes in it as ours does, because we're not talking about 2 zoning districts, you're talking about over half a dozen zoning districts. You would not typically go through and rezone the entire county. It is not uncommon to rezone a corridor. That's not uncommon at all. That's a very typical practice. But an entire county would be quite the undertaking. Certainly, if the board requests staff to do that, staff will undertake that endeavor. However, that would be pretty unusual.
And I can imagine the phone calls.
Well, we're going to get them every time somebody wants to go to 2.5 acres. You're going to
Well,
have
but
to hold
that's-
public hearings and do
That's
all
more
that.
limited than the whole county.
Oh, well, I was under the assumption that the next natural step would be updating the zoning map to match the comp plan.
So when you're saying updating the zoning maps, you're talking rezone the rest of the
Rezone.
county.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Match
that's a
the
conversation that we had, and you can do that. I think as you saw in the corridor, it's a pretty involved process. You'd probably want to handle it in chunks versus the whole county because of the potential for public input. At the time we did the comp plan and approved that, there wasn't an indication that the board wanted to proceed with rezoning, but certainly if that's what the board would like to do, we can start that process and come up with a game plan on how we get from.
I think that's exactly what I'm asking.
Okay, if that's what the board is wanting, then that's the next step.
And I'm asking. You know,
I mean, we have the land use plan, and so if someone in southern Leavenworth County, if someone wants to develop according to that land use plan and they have a plan, they can go to the planning commission and ask for a modification, but
Now
that
it's asking
seems
for a
reasonable.
rezone.
but see,
Right, a modification, a rezone, but to rezone say we wanted to rezone the entire southern Leavenworth County, then we would have to send notification out to everybody in Leavenworth County, southern Leavenworth County, correct?
yeah, and I get
Yes.
that, but it seems like it's extra work now. It doesn't make sense on top of the extra work that if somebody wants to apply for less than what the current zoning map says you can do, they have to go through all the extra steps. But it's approved because it matches the comp plan. So it just would make sense to me, instead of making people go through the extra work and ask for a special circumstance each time, to make the zoning map match the comp plan. I just thought that's what we normally do.
That's one argument, but you have a very limited number of people that are actually developing property compared to the masses
True.
of landowners.
Yeah, but it's every time somebody wants to build on 2.5 acres, there's going to have to be a public hearing, and we have to get rezone it.
The way it is
We have to
now.
rezone it.
Right.
Yeah, but if the zoning map matched the comp plan, that would stop.
It'd be like our R5 right now. You just,
It would fix all that. Is
Yeah.
where I was going.
Well, it has to be according to the comp plan when you change it. When you change
Exactly.
the zoning, you have to change, according to the land use plan, you change it. But there may be parcels that are never going to change.
And they don't
and that's the way it is in R5 right now.
And the zoning
Right.
doesn't.
So why
and
involve
zoning won't
them
change that either.
in a bureaucratic exercise?
Like I just said, it seems like we would be saving time and trouble by making the zoning map match the comp plan instead of treating every situation like it's a special use permit or a rezone.
So we had about 100 houses last year, 80 something.
And just like
Yeah.
you said, Mike, just because we zone something
Yeah,
2.5
89.
acres doesn't mean they have to use it like that. Doesn't mean that their appraisal is going to change to reflect anything different. It's just taking care of the next step. Zoning doesn't change.
If it's zoned, then it saves the step of the rezoning. But
Well, it's important to remember that the step of the rezoning still has to take place. Like, certainly we would be doing it all at once, but all of the requirements for a rezoning would still have to take place. We would be doing that for an entire county as opposed to one parcel at a time.
Every other.
Again,
For one, as a representative of the area that just got massively rezoned, and I can tell you the amount of angst that was expressed on the part of citizens just to rezone this little piece, I personally cannot imagine us taking on trying to rezone, for one, the entire county, or even like massive pieces of the county.
We're going to do it 2.5 acres at a time.
Well, but that is as development happens.
Is that a better way to do it? I guess that's the other parts of my question is, if we don't rezone the entire county to match the comp plan, then is it acceptable to do it the way we're doing it, one piece at a time?
that's very typical.
That's common?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very typical.
Or a
You know,
township at a time.
We're getting ready to look into this again because of some of the things that have happened. I sure wouldn't recommend doing it yet. I think that's a task that we could sure talk about
In March.
Yeah, later down the line. Yeah, instead of tackling it right now.
Let's look at our review.
Well,
review the comp plan.
I just don't want to be a county where you're.
Vicki, that's exactly.
Yeah, we're not even there yet.
No.
I just don't want to be known as a county that your neighbor has more rights to your property than you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think we're moving away from that.
No, we're not. We're getting orders.
I don't know. I look at our land use plan and the comprehensive plan. I look at that. I think that we've opened a lot of our county up to a lot more development.
We have, but then there's the people that live next to it that don't own the property seem to have more say in it than the person that owns the property.
Well, they haven't stopped any of the developments so far.
This is always going to be an interesting discussion. Like I told you folks before, I was been mixed on this before. I would say we'll let this set for right now,
Right.
and then we'll come back to it. That's all right with the board.
Yeah.
We can definitely look at this when we do the comp plan review, have that discussion in March, and I think maybe one of the approaches we could take is either continue the corridor, like we have the corridor down there that we did for Tonganoxie. We also have the reverse L corridor that we could look at doing that area, or we could take the approach of commercial and industrial, getting that taken care of that was identified. But so versus the entire county. Hit some specific areas where we would like to really encourage the development that the land use plan calls for. Because on the residential side, Crystal said it, when they come in for a plat, they have to go through the platting process regardless of what it's zoned. And so getting it rezoned at that time is, it does add a little time and obviously the potential for protests from the neighbors. But the reverse L corridor may be an area we could focus on first and then move out from there.
Okay. All righty. Anything else for Crystal? I think you can leave now, Crystal. Thank you.
So, okay, we'll put it on the calendar for March to have a work session, and we'll have all more stuff ready.
Crystal, I just wanted to tell you that I have really appreciated your department and all your staff. And the last year, I think you've done a fantastic job.
Thank you very much.
They did.
Thank
We
you.
got a lot of changes done last year, even with the pandemic.
Been busy.
Yes, we worked a little fun, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And next we have
Buildings and grounds.
Building and Grounds.
Aaron,
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners.
how are you today?
So I'll be fairly brief. Buildings and Grounds is made up of 4 maintenance people, one of which who is split with the sewer district, 3 part-time custodians, 1 admin assistant, and myself. What we have accomplished in the last quarter is greatly due to the amazing staff that I have. In this last quarter, we have installed iWave Cs, which are self-cleaning biopolar ionization generators that basically clean and scrub the air. And we have done it in the Justice Center as well as the courthouse, and we're looking to move into other county buildings so that way we have better air quality as well. It is a proven source to kill COVID, so that way we're working even more diligently to keep our staff safe as well as patrons. They have stepped up and over the last year stepped up with using their electrostatic disinfectant sprayer through the buildings every morning before staff arrives. We have not slowed down on any of our construction projects that we've been tasked with. We did not get to the annex buildings rock on the outside, but that has been pushed back to this year, and we plan on moving forward with that. This year we had the security of the courthouse, which we bumped out the space in the handicap entrance, and we set the x-ray machines as well as the metal detectors in preparation for security that the board had asked towards the courthouse. We facilitated making sure that our chosen contractor replaced 4,800 linear feet of fence out at the county shop, which the purchase of the land that you guys purchased that backs up to ours needed to be fenced as part of the purchase. That was completed, as well as a new entrance so that the lowboy can pull in off of the street before the entrance, and then that way patrons, if we do have to close the shop, can come up, hit, and then be let in to pick up noxious weeds so that they will no longer need to come to the courthouse for it. A 40 by 60 concrete pad poured at the county shop, as well as new lighting out at the county shop and charging stations for the block heaters for our large trucks and equipment. And we're pricing out right now for the second scale house as well as the second scale out at the transfer station, and that will come to you guys in a work session shortly. We've been working with the administrator. We've had hurdles with our Cushing building that my staff has been countless hours. Now we're instituted in a double check. We go over in the morning and check as well as in the evening. With the snow events, they've been completely awesome about taking care of our lots and making sure they're safe, as well as the cold weather, taking care of our buildings and making sure that our heaters are working and functioning correctly. Also in charge of buildings and grounds is our sewer districts. Our sewer districts have been a little finicky over the last 6 months. We've had pump issues at our pump houses. We've had 2 rebuilt. We bought a brand new one. We've got one that is sitting in to get rebuilt right now, and we just had the one that is running on a single yesterday go down, and my sewer district person as well as myself went down and took care of it, and we diverted issues.
Yeah.
KDHE's happy, so.
Other than that,
Those are not issues you want if you're a homeowner.
those are not issues we want,
Right.
especially for taxpayers as well as sewer districts issues.
Right.
Other than that, I'd really like to thank my staff for going above and beyond this entire time. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Well, first thing I just want to say is, since coming here over 6 weeks ago, I've been impressed with you and your crew. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like I said before, on a lot of people don't know a lot of county employees do, and you're another one of those divisions that I've been very impressed with. So, hats off to you. I have no questions. Anybody has questions?
The outbound scale, that what we're talking about is the transfer station.
Correct, the
That is-
outbound scale as well as the second
That's
scale
needed to
house.
be there since they built the transfer station. I mean, I hope that we can find the funds for that and get that project done.
Tammy has allocated funds for it, as well as the RFP is written for the scale, as well as we have priced out with short estimations for a modular or a stick built, whichever one's going to be cheaper. The RFP for that will be either a modular or a stick built. Whichever one comes in cheaper is what we'll go with. And then from there, I believe we'll have a work session on
Next week?
the 3rd. I thought it was the 3rd.
Yeah, that's right. Next week.
On,
that's
on the 3rd, for you guys to decide on placement of where you would like to see with other options. But Tammy will be present as well as myself and Mr. Loftery. We've been working on it and discussing it.
Wish we'd have just built the thing right to start with and done with it.
Well, we've slowly but surely over the last 2 years we've concreted and
No,
created
you've
those
done
entrances,
an excellent
cleaned that
job
up,
on
and then
Trying to keep
we'll,
going.
with the second outbound scale, then from there, the idea of possibly asphalting over time to get rid of all of the dust and rock out
Exactly.
there. The major thoroughfare areas that we need are concreted, so now we should not have a closure to complete any other construction tasks.
So, I don't know if this is a question for you or for Mark, but the status of the insurance claim for Cushing, where does that stand?
The status on the insurance claim. So I've taken a crash course in insurance now. So we have an insurer as well as a reinsurer. All the parties met. They have their own independent inspector who both parties mutually agreed that they were going to use one and split the cost. The findings have not been back from him. The best that we can understand is at some point the boiler that was downstairs shut off. The previous owner had the makeup air, which is the outside air that's drawn into the building to make sure that we don't have any buildup of gases and you have correct flow through your flue, was set to continuous. So when that boiler shut off, it kept drawing in outside air, which caused a supercooled area, and it froze the pipes, which caused the leak. From there, we're waiting on the insurance adjuster as well as the independent investigator to come back with what his findings are. But all of our paperwork has been turned in, all of our findings, all of our pictures, and we've been actively working with both the reinsurers as well as the blanket coverage insurer.
We're on top of it, okay?
Very good. Other question is, did you get that shirt on the Doughboy yourself, or did you have other staff members helping you?
The fact that we had criticism over the shirt on the Doughboy, I took it upon myself to go out there, but I was the one that put it on there so that if anybody ever had any issues about it was me that they had the issue with.
Oh, I haven't heard any issues. I thought it just was.
Last year we had
Thought it'd be very difficult to get it on.
Last year we had a heated debate on Facebook with somebody that didn't enjoy it. The overwhelming support of it kind of snuffed that out. But again, since they went back to the Super Bowl, I figured it would be best that I put it on there so that if there were any questions, it stopped with me.
So, well, very good. You did a very good job.
I think so too.
But
I liked it.
I did too.
As long as my county commissioners like it, my administrator, I guess I'm in the clear then.
Well, there's a lot of other people taking pictures by it. There's other
Yeah.
people that liked it too.
and how you've lit up the courthouse, a lot of people have enjoyed that
Yes.
What you should have done, though, is you should have gone down to Florida and helped with that offensive line when they were playing, though. Move right along.
That's asking a lot.
Job description.
All of the duties. Come
I'm
on.
pretty sure he was signed up to go down to Florida and spend the week.
Yeah, but I don't
I don't know
think he
about
was
helping the offensive
Human
line.
sacrifice.
Exactly.
Okay. Anything else on this?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank your staff also.
Yes, sir.
Council on Aging?
All right, we're ready for Connie.
Mary, okay. Good morning.
Commissioners, good morning. First, let me say I'm excited to be here. This is my first time in front of the board. I'm excited to talk to you about the Council on Aging. I think for me, probably good to mention this is day 119, so I've been here just a little over a quarter myself. And provided you with some statistics so you could see a little bit of what's happening there. In the last quarter, we had 11 positions to fill. So the Council on Aging looks a little different than it did at this time last year. So we've had a little bit of a turnover there, but all working well and positions all filled. I think it's important to note, too, when we think about the Council on Aging, I think it's easy to think about Meals on Wheels, and you see our transportation team out there. But also very important to note that there are two other very important parts of the Council on Aging, and that's our in-home support team as well as our human services team. We have had quite an impact with COVID-19 and are looking forward to finishing out this quarter and to the next quarter and shifting from being open by appointment only to reopening some of our activities this year. With that change in our activities, we've not been able to offer a lot of our in-person programs and services, so we've had to really shift and rethink and redesign. And as Aaron mentioned, the credit to his staff, and I'll just give that shout out to mine as well. What it has taken to do that rethinking and redesign of everything that we do has been an incredible task that the staff has undertaken this year. To not have missed delivery of Meals on Wheels during that time due to COVID has been a really important milestone for us. We have lost about 30 volunteers that we were used to having because of fear with COVID. So we're working with much less staff than we've had in the past. But we've seen about a 30% increase in the number of people that we're serving every day with Meals on Wheels. So our first car leaves about 6:30 in the morning, and by the time the last one returns at 1 o'clock, we've delivered 426 meals every day. And so that was almost 95,000 meals in 2020. So that's something that we're really proud of. The other thing that we did just in January was we surveyed all of our Meals on Wheels participants. We know that we have our RFPs for our paper goods and our catering services coming up for bid in March. So we wanted to get a really good feel for how that's working for our participants. So with that 30% growth, we've seen nearly all of that in the southern part of our county. We've added about 30 people just in January and February of this year alone. But some of the things that they told us is for about 91% of the people that we serve on Meals on Wheels, they told us it's half or more of what they eat in a day. And for about 50%, it's about all they eat. So it just goes to show the essential nature of that service. And we appreciate so much the county's support of that program because it is so important.
So Connie,
Yeah.
basically you're saying you deliver more or less 450 meals, and for half of those people, it's the only meal they get. So, and Connie and I have been talking about that recently, and she's trying to come up with a program that would help cover weekends, just because that number is just so kind of shocking to me anyways. So there's 250, give or take, people on the weekends that don't get meals because we don't deliver on meals, and so they're just holding over, and Connie's doing a great job of trying to address some of that.
I have a question on that. Is that because they don't have food in the home, or is that because why is that that's the only meal?
For most, they're homebound, and their income is such that they're not able to provide that for themselves, or they don't have someone else who can go and get that for them. So the fact that that meal is delivered to them every day is the vehicle by which they are fed.
So if I guess what I was thinking of is if you knew who these 250 people are, provide some groceries or some
Right.
some things.
Right.
It's kind of like a backpack buddy concept. I mean, are you familiar with what that is?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, like a
Just
back snack for sure. So
Right, something like that, that on Friday, on that delivery, they get a weekend
Additional,
allocation
yeah.
of foods that are
Did you
Because you might have people
Yeah.
that would donate enough to get
For
these
sure.
folks some stuff to have in the cupboard.
And so this year, we have tried lots of different things. Delivering a second meal on Friday, our caterer is amazing in helping us think of different ways that we can work that. We also have a new partnership with Second Harvest, where we get 100 20-pound boxes every month that go first to our veterans who are also on Meals on Wheels, and then to other folks who are in need. And that is something that we do by income level first, and we get that box every month. And then I've never seen such generosity by a community as exists in Leavenworth County. And you would think at a time during COVID when folks have less to give, they would give less. But what we've seen is folks have given more. And so we have utilized every donation that we have that comes out. So we give food out for every holiday. We just sent out Valentine's, extra Valentine's, so they would have in that extra canned goods, extra food, extra things that they can have at the holidays. We did the same at Christmas, and we'll do that. So we're looking for all of those different partnerships to ensure that there's other ways that we can feed them and help them through those tough times.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So it is super rewarding also to be a part of.
Right.
Well, if we can ever get through this pandemic where you can have your fundraisers again,
Yeah.
you'll
Well,
really see the support the community has for
Yeah.
Counseling on Aging.
Yeah. So far with just the small ones that we've been able to do, like I said, overwhelming, the support for the council. The other thing that we do is transportation, as you know, that also we saw a huge impact with COVID in that we had to start transporting people one at a time from multi-passenger trips. So you see that our trips are down. We had about 23,000 trips last year, with about 12,000 this year, but our revenue isn't down as much as our trips because we're taking a lot of folks out of county to Kansas City. That's a little bit more expensive trip, but we saw a significant increase in the need for medical trips for folks and added about 100 new riders to our transportation program. Something else that we're trying and partnering with the health department is to get folks to their vaccination appointments, and we cut the cost of those to $1 round trip. And we have been inundated with calls to get folks who want to be vaccinated to those appointments at a low cost in transportation that they're used to. And so it's also given us a little bit of a dry run back to pre-COVID levels of transportation in our new fleet vehicles that we also received in the last quarter. So we've been able to take more than one passenger on in our new transit vans. We can strap 3 wheelchairs in there and keep them distanced, as well as utilizing our buses to make fewer trips but pick up more people. So that's been hugely successful for us. The other thing that I'll just highlight is one of the things we saw with the sign up for the vaccine is a little bit of a digital divide. That was an online sign up. We serve a population that may not have a computer at home or may not be digitally literate to do that. So we fielded ourselves about 400 calls in the last 2 weeks to get folks signed up. That has been a huge blessing to the community and something that's been really well received. We talked to a lot of kids of parents. We talked to a lot of patrons to get them signed up and give them that reassurance that they were successfully added to the list. So we were really pleased to be able to work with Jamie in any way that we could, because we know that as soon as folks feel comfortable and safe, they'll come back to our programs when we're able to open. The other big thing that's been happening here is we are relooking at every single process that we have at the council right now. With me coming in as a new director, and we're super excited to be thinking about Cushing, and have sent Mr. Lawfrey a couple of different plans to think about with our use of the space at Cushing, and think about how we could possibly rework some different programs, rethink some programs, and add some space that we think would best serve our population moving forward. Happy to answer any questions.
You have a lot of energy. This is amazing. A couple of years ago, I helped with the mills and stuff like that, and I'm just telling you, these people are so appreciative. So I really appreciate the work you and your staff are doing.
We got them in a lot nicer vehicles than they had a couple of years ago.
That's true.
I thought that's a good point that, and Connie mentioned their fleet, and we have replaced probably 90+% of their fleet in the last year. I know there's still vehicles rolling in, and like everything, our delivery on those has been delayed a little bit because of COVID, so we haven't got as many in as we wanted, but they're ordered and they're coming on, and they're either there or they're on their way shortly. So I think that is a big improvement over where they were just a few years ago, and their vans, their big vans, we were able to replace some of those too. So.
Yeah, and really amazing. When one of our transit vans came in, all the seats come out, and there are rails down the middle to strap in vehicle or wheelchairs. You would have thought it was a Ferrari sitting in the parking lot.
It was. What you had before, it was. There it is.
Super excited, just because it will hold so many more people. But if you're interested, we would love to have you help us deliver Meals on Wheels in March.
Okay.
We do that every March. We call it Champions Week. So it'll be, I think, the third week of March. So if we reach out, we'll let you know some details if any of you would love to get in one of those new vehicles with us and get out and see some folks. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, I was in the old one. I think the new one would be a treat. Okay.
It's pretty slick, for sure.
Their vehicles needed it upgraded. They needed upgraded. You just can't keep kicking that can down the road, and then all of a sudden the whole fleet's wore out.
Yeah.
And Connie, I'm speaking for the board here. This board very supportive of Council on Aging, and if you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask Mr. Lawfrey what you need and get it to us. And I'm pretty sure this board will see that you get it.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much.
I think it's been really exciting to work with Connie on the new space at Cushing too. It's clear they have a vision on how they can utilize that space to improve services, to grow the program, and just very well thought out. I mean, down to the scale model of what they're looking at. So.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
So how's the morale as far as moving to Cushing and the acceptance of your constituency for that move? Have you heard any more feedback? Because we at one point we had a large attendance here.
I've not heard anything but excitement. No rumbles about not wanting to move. I think for us, the staff is super excited, and the energy that we put out is the energy that we get back. And we see that matched in the conversations that we have, and we're nothing but excited to think about that new space and what that can look like and what else we can offer with it. So that's the conversation that we have when we speak to folks about it, and we typically get that in return.
Well, and that was when that all occurred. That's what we, as a commission, I know we had all said we want to get you a great location, and it's worked out perfect. But I just want people to know, we always, I know that the commission always intended for whatever was going to work out the best for the Council on Aging. That's what was intended.
Yeah.
And we weren't cutting programs.
No.
Or providing TV dinners, frozen TV dinners.
Folks worry about parking. That's the big question on folks' mind. But other than that, nothing nothing but excitement.
But there is options for the parking. I mean, we have additional land there. So,
Anything else, Connie?
well, just thank you for everything
Thank
you've
you.
done.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Community corrections?
How are you today?
Morning.
Yeah, how are y'all?
So in case you guys didn't notice, Jamie is also our work session after this meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We can
it'll be fine to
transition
stop and take a break and come
Yeah, you'll
back.
need to.
Okay.
Yeah. Go right ahead.
All right. Well, I've been here since September 14th. The last time I was in front of y'all, we talked about the end of year report for last year. I did attach the quarterly report that I presented to the state last month in the meeting for KDOC's requirements. You will see for our quarterly report, I also attached the first quarter, just so you can see the changes that I've made that were addressed as goals and objectives in the comp plan and how I have decided to take a different direction. The process goal that we are working with in Leavenworth County Community Corrections is to see a standard of increase of compliance with chronos, case plans, and LSIR data entry. LSIRs are the assessment tool that we use to identify an offender's risk and needs in the communities, so it helps us with case planning, but also directs us as to how often they need to report in and have contact with our office. To be successful and to also keep the community safe as far as public safety and know what these people are doing. Things have gone well over the past quarter. We're doing more reviews, and every Monday my officers are printing off their reports so they have an understanding of where they're at in terms of contacts, and meeting those standards of compliance is a version of self-policing. We're working on constantly improving as far as training and our practices, to better use our time, just be more meaningful in the context that we do have. Our caseloads are rather high. You'll see the outcome goal that we are working towards is just meeting the state goal of 75% successful completion of offenders from supervision. The goal is 75. The first quarter we were at 63%, and this second quarter we are now at 46%. In the second quarter alone, 28 cases were closed, 13 of those successful, 15 unsuccessful, and of the 15 unsuccessful, only one of those cases were revoked for committing a new crime. The other 14 were revoked on conditions, and what that means is they might have just violated a rule, but maybe not reporting, maybe not going to treatment, not making payments, and all of those can also be responsivity issues, things that we could avoid with planning and with resources and collaborating, also with having additional time. I did go into that a little bit further about what we're looking into as far as the data to understand why we're revoking and sending so many people to KDOC on conditions. Of course, a lot of that has to do with our high client-to-staff ratio, as well as the fact that district court is now able to catch up on the cases and motions that we'd already filed. They're picking up absconders that ran during COVID. We're doing the best with what we can right now. I think for the year to date, we're at 50% as our average. And as far as our population, in January, our average monthly population on the adult side was 151 active people on probation, with 228 being a total. The remaining, 75 or so, those are people who maybe have been deported, they're in prison or in other states on parole, and so they're not active in our community coming and seeking our services. We have about 228 people on probation in total. The juvenile probation side has 24 clients that they serve. You'll see that our success rate on that side is currently at 35% out of 7 out of 20 people. We're working with what we can. A lot of it is if people aren't coming to probation, we can't help them. If they're out committing new crimes, we're not responsible for them committing new crimes. However, we are doing the best that we can to operate within state standards, and I have a great staff over there that they are really invested in this community and wanting to help the offenders that they're serving. As far as finances, we are doing very well. We have all of our grant money left for our juvenile day reporting center, and we're currently getting ready to start scheduling second interviews for that. We finished up first round interviews yesterday through Zoom. We have about $27,000 left for Project Change, our reinvestment grant on the juvenile side. Our prevention grant is currently at about $17,000, and reimbursements for the juvenile side are $22,381. On the adult side, we have about 49% of our grant remaining with $115,000. Our reimbursements on that side are about $36,000, and we have $1,300 left for behavioral health grant, which assists in paying for violence assessments, anger management, mental health, any additional treatment fees that maybe our clients can't pay because they're on fixed incomes, or they're not veterans, so they don't have access to those services. I currently have 5 staff members. I have an excellent business manager, 2 great supervisors, one on the adult side, one on the juvenile, and then I have 1 officer under my supervisor. So 2 juvenile probation officers in total and 2 on the adult side. They are serving a large population. There have been a lot of rollouts and reforms on the juvenile side in the past 5 years. So our population is down on that side, but there are a lot of services that they have to stay in contact with, and even when clients aren't in the community but are at the juvenile correctional facility, they're having to stay on top of that and meet with them. Just as an overview, Community Corrections was established in 1978 in the state of Kansas, patterned after a Minnesota Community Corrections Act. The intention of our program is to provide an alternative to the costs of incarceration and the costs of new prison construction. Counties were to establish a correction advisory board to come up with a comp plan that addressed each community's different needs and how the state grants could address that through funding. Leavenworth County actually established their program in 1981, and we're the second county in the state to establish Community Corrections Agency. Since that time, they also expanded legislature to cover the juvenile services, and we've been passed around, but juvenile services are now back under the authority of the Kansas Department of Corrections, and we had the statewide juvenile justice reform in 2016, the Senate Bill 367. We are a state and local partnership with the intention of providing and promoting public safety, providing highly structured and intensive community supervision to felony level criminal offenders. We hold them accountable to their victims, to the community, and we try to improve the community and the offender's ability to live productively and lawfully. We are the most intensive level of supervision. The next step to us is you get sent to prison. Everything that we do is structured around how often these clients are supposed to be reporting in and making sure they are following all conditions set from the court, addressing any needs that caused the violation of the crime. Whether that be mental health issues, addiction, trauma, quality of life issues as far as education, employment. We are trying to reduce all of their criminogenic needs and risks, and the cost of supervision around the community is only $5.64 per person per day for them to remain in the community and work on all of the stuff that we're asking them to do to better themselves, while the average daily cost of incarceration per person is about $82.47 a day. I have printed off some of this information, and we'll provide that with you after this if you have any questions.
If I could, I would like to just take a minute to brag on Jamie a little bit, and some of this we'll probably talk about in the work session. But, for probably the last 4 years, one of the things that we've been working on or struggling with really is our caseload per our funding. And this department has historically been 100% funded at the state level. So when Jamie came on, I challenged her with, she identified the problem real quick, and I challenged her to trying to come up with how we compare with other counties, what we can do to address that. And one of the things that she went to the state with was we need more staff because we are providing services to so many people. We're just not, that's why you see the outcomes are not at the level we'd like them to be at 75%. And she went to the state and they said, well, prove it basically. And she did. So she went and showed them that, per client that we serve, we were receiving a lot less money than some of the other counties around us. And she was able to secure just recently their commitment to additional funds to help with that. But I also think, and that's what the work session is going to get into a little bit, I think it's incumbent on us to pick up some of the slack too, because like a lot of our peer counties provide additional funding, not just the state funding. So that's what we're going to talk about in the work session is identifying areas where the county can also participate in funding this, because as she noted, $5 or about $6 a person on community corrections, $83 if we have to incarcerate. So there's a huge savings to the taxpayers in general if we can be successful at Jamie's level versus the incarceration.
Exactly.
The target of 75%, is that a state target? Or
That is the state minimum.
Right.
And then if you're already above 75 and meeting goal, each year they want you to increase that by 3%. So in fiscal year 19, that goal was met, and last year's goal for fiscal year 20 was to increase it by 3%, and suddenly we dropped. That's also covered, obviously, in writing in the quarterly report. But just to go on what Mark said, when someone tells me to prove something, I like to do my research.
Draft and charge.
So I looked at all of the allocations across the state to every other 31 district, and looked at the cost that they were receiving versus their population, which is available in state reports, and looked at what their outcomes were, how many officers they had, what their caseload averages were. If you look at what we are allotted from the state right now, per person, the state gives us about $4.13 as their investment into our offenders. Why is it then, if you're looking at, the 5th district, they're getting $13.94 a person? Why is an offender in another county worth more money? And we presented these questions, and I've been hounding the state. That's just who
Can I get a
am.
copy of that when you're done?
Yeah, I printed 6 of these.
Okay.
With links and resources. And so you can see what the cost per unit looks like. What I didn't put on here is, it didn't print nicely, but I also have another one that shows you which one of the counties are covered by each 31 district. The largest district covers 17 Kansas counties. And it also will show you what the contribution is from local funds, as well as the sources, whether it's from JAG or alcohol sales tax, city funds, or the county and what those funds are paying for. And also I have a list of all the in-kind services. So I've been doing my work.
As far as judicial
Question.
districts go, we kind of have a unique situation going on there as well because of the two counties, Atchison and Leavenworth, don't work and play well together when it comes to the first judicial district. And so that has created kind of a, what would you call it, a challenge?
How would you like to be in a pool with 17 other counties?
Right, but I'm just saying that I just think it's interesting that just we would not form our own, or between the judicial district, we have two separate sets of staffing.
Right.
So, well, that's kind
We're not
of one question I was going to ask.
Resources.
Is the org chart, like, and maybe Mark can answer that, you're underneath, your agency's underneath sort of the Department of Corrections, but we fund it. Who do you report? Do you report just to us, or do you report, who's your report? Who's your supervisor? How's that org chart work?
So they're employees of the county.
Okay.
It's just that their funding source happens to be state funding.
Yeah.
So they fall
So
under
you report to?
Yeah, Jamie reports to me. They fall under the county commission. And then they are accountable, though, to the state. They have to meet state, because of the funding, they have to meet state outcomes. So they answer to us. They're employees of the county, but they have to follow the state guidelines and meet state outcomes.
Yeah.
Okay, and another question I had when the folks in this juvenile program, did they commit the crime when they were a juvenile, like they were underneath age 18, or is it 17 and below, or what's the?
It just varies. Some people can be, by the time they're charged, it's really at the time that they committed the offense. I think you're up to 21 on the juvenile side, so we have some people who are, 19, 20, that are still on with us or in the JCF.
Okay. If you're tried as an adult, are you still eligible for, like if in the court they try you as an adult, are you eligible for this program?
No, you'd come to adult probation.
Okay. Then other
Unless
question.
a judge makes it.
Yeah, and Jamie's both adult and juvenile, just so you're.
Are you allowed to partner with nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and those outside groups as far as fundraising and participation?
Faith-based groups?
Or nonprofits?
Right. I would assume no on the faith-based groups. Of course, we can work with nonprofits. You'll see a lot of other agencies collaborating with like their local mental health provider and creating criminal justice mental health liaisons. You'll see other agencies where we can have all of our clients who they have a lot of court costs associated with being on supervision. Some of them have fixed income. Some of them need to complete community service work hours in lieu of payments, especially if they're on disability. So you would see them, like, our people will participate in community service work for your agency. We'll direct them to you, and you will then help with these services as far as, providing, case management and additional resources in the community, whether it be through,
So you can't work with like Catholic Social Services, or you can't work, if it's a faith-based group, you can't work with it. Okay.
But they still have a program. What is it? What's the acronym? MRT, Moral Reclamation Therapy.
Right.
Am I right? Is that
Yes.
what it is? Wow. See. So
Okay.
there is some
All right.
moral training going on.
yes.
That's good. I would like it if they did involve more faith-based organizations.
You can volunteer.
Right, we have evidence-based
Not
programming
against that.
that, takes out any kind of religious piece, but addresses, thinking errors, and we'll work with them on criminal thinking errors, and of course we direct them if they're struggling with addiction or other issues to support group meetings, and that can be different. Some people will look at a pro-social support group as going to boxing, or it can be going to a 12-step meeting or joining a men's Bible study. It really just depends on the person, but we as a criminal justice agency and getting our funding from the state, we can't require anybody to do faith-based programming, just
No, I wasn't meaning require it, but I was meaning if it was allowed the participation. As far we were talking about like fundraising, that kind of thing. So.
All righty. Anything else for?
I think I can save any questions for the work session.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. Thank you for this
All right, thanks,
first
Jamie.
part. Any additional public comments?
Nope.
Anybody? Any? Checking Jeff? I don't think there is.
A little baby research paper. Right. I
Okay.
love baby research.
I did too. So
Can we get a
I
motion?
can graphs and charts all day long.
yeah,
Thank you.
I'm a friend of Excel and
All right, thank you.
resources,
I'll move we adjourn and go to the work session.
Second.
Let's have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Get a motion and a second to
Then at
adjourn.
some point, you and I still need to get
Commissioner
your
Collins?
pieces down.
Aye.
Aye, Commissioner Collins.
Some of our,
Commissioner Collins.
I
Okay.
We're adjourned.